This film is based on the exercises employed on the Pilot Gunnery Instructors course at the Central Gunnery School. The exercises to be employed are for sighting practice only, and the initial methods of approach should not be considered as having any tactical value. As all attacks are made on aircraft instead of drogues, only the camera gun is used on these exercises. Don't forget your camera master switch. The films taken on these exercises are subsequently projected and criticized by the gunnery instructor. Individual pilots then assess their films on a GRU assessor. To ensure accurate criticizing and assessing, the pilot must take a sighter burst before commencing an exercise. This consists of a 1 to 2 seconds burst at 250 yards range with the bead held steady on the target. The sighter burst enables the bead of the GM2 sight to be located on the projector and assessor screens. As the shooting is from dead astern, the marksman must concentrate on firing only when the sight is accurately on the target. The approach should be organized so that the minimum target slipstream is encountered. Whilst the range bars may be used at the beginning of the exercise to estimate the relative size of the target at 250 yards and again at 150 yards, they should be withdrawn as soon as the pilot is able to judge the range without their help. The main object of the exercise is to estimate the relative size of the target to the sight ring at the optimum range for firing. The importance of range in combat cannot be overemphasized. The majority of successful combats are within 250 yards range. When a deflection shot is taken, it is essential for the marksman to line up the target so that it is flying directly towards the bead of the reflector sight. In this exercise, the target aircraft makes alternate turns to port and starboard, and the marksman should concentrate on firing only when the range and line of flight are correct. Allowance for deflection is not considered. The marksman should place the bead of his sight behind the target and then pull the bead ahead, firing a 1 to 2 seconds burst along the estimated line of flight. These and all other G45 shots have been produced by instructors of the Central Gunnery School. Note the steadiness of aim, correct line of flight and range. Your object should be to produce similar results. In all deflection shooting, whilst range and line of flight are equally important, the more difficult factor, requiring much practice, is the judgment of the angle off presented by the target. In the subsequent G45 shots, deflection is based on an estimated airspeed of 200 miles an hour. Correct deflection has been allowed in the following shots for specific angles off. 30 degrees angle off, so 1 ring deflection. 45 degrees angle off, so 1.5 rings deflection. 45 degrees, 1.5 rings. 30 degrees, 1 ring. Here are examples of steady deflection shots taken from combat films. The quarter attack is the basis of training for all deflection shooting. In all forms of this exercise, the target aircraft flies straight and level during the attack. These standard methods of approach will now be considered in greater detail. The method of procedure is similar to that used for attacks on the drogue. The aircraft approach from opposite directions, and the attack begins when the attacking aircraft is 1,000 yards ahead, 1,000 yards to one side, and slightly above the target aircraft. The marksman makes a smooth curve round into the key position, at which point the bead of the reflector sight is placed on the target. The sight is held on the target until the range is closed to about 300 yards, the angle off having been automatically reduced to 45 degrees. The sight is now pulled through along the line of flight, and the correct deflection laid off. The curve of pursuit is continued, and as the angle off decreases, so the deflection is reduced accordingly. The marksman finishes up with a point-blank aim. After completing the attack, the marksman breaks away and repositions himself for a further attack in the opposite direction. The success of all quarter attack exercises depends on correct positioning at the start of the attack, anticipating the position of the target at all stages of the exercise, and of course on accurate sighting. When the curve of pursuit develops from a parallel course, the marksman must position himself 1,500 yards to one side of the target and roughly 1,000 feet above it. The marksman then flies until he is slightly ahead of the target, so that when he is turned towards it and reversed his turn, he is in the key position at about 500 yards. The remaining part of the curve of pursuit is then similar to that for the head-on approach. It is only through assiduous practice that the art of position judging may be mastered. Once this has been accomplished, shots like these should be easy. Approaches from overhead are made from opposite and parallel courses. In the former attack, the marksman approaches to within 1,000 yards of the target, 3,000 feet above, and climbing slightly to lose speed before turning into the attack. Your sights should begin to bear when you are at 2,000 feet above the target and pointing vertically downward. As you come within range, the sight is drawn ahead along the line of flight, and firing takes place from 40 degrees or less to about 10 degrees angle off before breaking away. In the overhead attack from a parallel course, the marksman should fly on a parallel course 3,000 feet above and 200 yards to one side of the target. When some distance ahead, so that the target can easily be seen behind the trailing edge of the wing, the marksman should turn in towards the target through 180 degrees, at the same time making a half roll and bringing the sights to bear. The key position in this approach is for the attacking aircraft to be pointing vertically downwards with the sight on the target at 2,000 feet above it. The remainder of the attack is the same as that for the overhead opposite approach. Beginning this attack slightly above and 1,500 yards to one side of the target, the marksman dives to a position 2,000 to 3,000 feet below the target, slightly ahead and to one side. At this position, the sight should be laid on. From the key position, the ensuing curve of pursuit leads to an attack made in the inverted position, the marksman firing from 40 to 20 degrees angle off. Breakaway should be by the completion of the natural barrel roll which develops from the initial part of the approach. It must be borne in mind that this is an advanced handling and sighting exercise designed to complete a program which makes the pupil completely sight conscious. This exercise is similar in general form to exercise 3, that is, steady deflection, target turning. But the target carries out a more violent and indeterminate form of avoiding action. The cine gunshots resemble those taken in exercise 3, but to obtain accurate marksmanship, the pilot's reactions must be quicker. The target should attempt to maintain a mean speed during this exercise, and the range should be kept constant at 250 yards. This is an advanced exercise in range estimation and steadiness of aim. The target flies at 200 miles an hour, straight and level, whilst the marksman attacks from anywhere he pleases at high overtaking speed, bringing his sight to bear in the astern position at 300 yards. Short bursts are taken while closing to 50 yards. It should be remembered that the line of the guns is displaced below the line of the sight. Therefore, at ranges less than 100 yards, aim must be towards the top of the cockpit. Great concentration and control is required by the marksman due to the high closing speed. This exercise is similar in form to the previous exercise, but the target executes gentle weaver evasive action. The marksman is therefore presented with deflection shots, and as a result, extra concentration and more difficult handling are required when sighting. These are typical examples of jumping and evading taken from combat films.